Okay, for those who are watching on the recording and those watching live, very good afternoon. This is our second session as part of Class of 2022 week. So a full week of events, activities for final year undergraduate and postgraduate students, all taking place this week. So this session is the Find That Graduate Job session. That's kind of going to be taking place not only this afternoon, but we've got another similar session on Thursday morning as well. So if you for whatever reason, you need to kind of duck out of this one early, we're going to have a similar session taking place on Thursday as well. And that's part of the schedule that I'll show at the end of the recording. So yeah, very warm welcome. I hope everyone's having kind of a good start to the week. I'm going to do a bit of a breakdown about what we're going to cover in this short session a little bit kind of later on. But first of all, just a very, very quick introduction. So my name is Chris Webb. I'm a Senior Employability Advisor with the Sheffield Hallam Careers and Employability Service, and I've also included my email address on the slide at the start of the session if you do want to get in touch at any point after the session, or if there's anything we kind of talk about today that's unclear or anything that you want to go through in more detail. Key thing to mention with this particular session is it's quite a short one today. It's just half an hour. And although the kind of subject of graduate job hunting is really broad, there's loads and loads that we could talk about. Obviously, this is kind of designed just to be sort of a whistle-stop tour and to kind of provide some sort of helpful tips and advice to get you thinking. So if there are other things you want to talk about following the session, we certainly can do that. I'm just going to check the chat because we've already had some questions come through. I noticed that, yeah, Ella's mentioned that she's struggling to hear. So I'm just going to pause the recording quickly. Okay, good stuff. So we're back on the recording. So again, just a reminder, if you've got any questions following the session, please feel free to drop me an email. So this is kind of what we're broadly going to cover in the half an hour that we've got today. We're going to start by just kind of getting a few starting points. So asking all of you here today just to share your opinions about where you're at with your graduate kind of job searching process. We're then going to talk about what does kind of job hunting look or feel like, and some of the kind of strategies that you can use to kind of improve when you're sort of looking for a graduate job, and then sort of go through in a bit more detail what some of those strategies look like. So what I'd call the graduate job search playbook, what different kind of approaches you can use to hopefully kind of improve the effectiveness when you're looking for different types of graduate roles. So that's kind of what we're going to be covering in session today. But if you've got any questions at all at any point during the session, just let us know, pop them in the chat, as we saw somebody do a minute ago, and I can pick these up directly either within the session or at the end of the session if we stay behind afterwards. So yeah, any questions at all, please feel free to share them in the Zoom chat. Okay, so just in terms of kind of starting points, and this is just something I want to kind of get everybody here doing, just so we have a little bit of an idea of where people are up to in the kind of graduate job search process at the moment. So in a second, I'm going to share with you a link within the chat box on Zoom. This is a link that's the same as the one at the bottom of the screen, which is www.polev.com/Christopher W685. All you need to do with that link is copy and paste it into your web browser or Google Chrome, or you can even use it on mobile phones or tablets. And it will take you to a live online survey or poll where you'll get one of these three options. So this is kind of saying, where are you in the graduate job hunting process at the moment? Option A, no idea where to start, please give me help. Option B, you've got some ideas, but you feel you need some additional support. And then option C, pretty confident in job hunting, but you're just here for some extra tips or advice. So this is just to give us an idea of where people are at before we start the session. I'm going to put the link in the chat box now and just pause that recording so that people can do this. Just go through this quickly before we move on. So thanks for those who kind of shared their thoughts on the poll. A really, really nice mixture that we've got here today. It looks like the vast majority of us are probably familiar with the concept of kind of job hunting in general, or kind of graduate job search, but really kind of want some additional support. And again, we'll, as we go through the session, we'll hopefully sort of find out what parts of that support might be most useful for you. Some people maybe who've got no idea where to start, and that's absolutely fine. So some of the content we're going to be talking about today is hopefully going to help you, even just as a kind of starting point. And then we've got some people here who feel pretty confident, maybe looking for some additional tips and advice. And again, hopefully some of the content we cover today is going to give you a little bit extra in terms of job search strategies that you might not have got already. So hopefully it'll be quite a broad mix and it will cover all of those kind of different areas that people are wanting to find out about. So before we kind of get into the bulk of the session, really useful just to kind of consider this idea of when we talk about sort of job hunting or graduate job search, finding graduate jobs, what does that feel like? What does it look like? And I think it's probably fair to say that for a lot of people, and this is not just graduate job hunting, but job hunting in general, it can often feel a little bit like this image. So, a little bit like a dartboard, you're kind of throwing lots of darts, and some of them stick or kind of partially stick, some of them miss. It's not always easy to work out, why they've stuck or why they've missed. And it can sometimes feel a little bit kind of draining, a little bit demoralizing, and that's something that's reported back to us, not just by graduate job seekers, by job seekers of, any age, any level of experience. So, you're not alone. If you sometimes feel that kind of searching for jobs can feel a bit sort of draining, it can feel a bit like throwing darts at a board, that's kind of shared by a lot of people. But hopefully what we're going to talk about today is going to change the way that you view sort of job searching a little bit, and take it a little bit away from this kind of scattergun approach and make it a little bit more focused on this idea of targeting and what should job hunting feel like. And ideally, it should feel like something where you are kind of targeting your job search. So this doesn't necessarily mean that you'll always know that you'll hit the target, that you'll always get the job that you're going for, but it does mean that you'll be in a better position to do this. And this is kind of some of the strategies we're going to talk about today. But more importantly, it's important that you actually have a better idea of why you've selected that target in the first place. And we're going to come on to that in a second. And then what you might need to do to hit that target when it comes to looking for a job. So the kind of one of the key things we're going to talk about today is this idea of, targeting your job search. So it's not just kind of a scattergun, but feels like something that you've spent more time on, and that it feels like it's a little bit more focused. And hopefully some of the strategies we're going to talk about today will help with that. And before we kind of really come on to that, it's important to actually kind of almost take a step back and put this in the context of making good career decisions. And this is something that sometimes when it comes to job searching, we don't all think about. We sometimes think, I need a job and I'm just going to go out there and start looking for jobs. And actually, before we do that, it's really useful sometimes to take a step back and go, okay, why am I looking for this? Or how have I made this decision? So this is a very kind of simple sort of framework for thinking about making career decisions that we sometimes use within our careers team. And the first step of that is kind of self-awareness. So again, when you're kind of looking for work, the same process should apply as to whether you were looking for a postgraduate course or looking for any other type of opportunity. Thinking about, what interests you, what motivates you, what type of opportunities are you looking for? It's then a case of kind of going down and thinking, okay, well, what opportunities are out there at the moment? What kind of aligns with my interests? And actually, these are two steps that a lot of people don't do before they start job hunting. Sometimes they just kind of go onto a website like Indeed, GradCracker or Handshake, start looking for jobs, but without a clear idea of what they're looking for or why they're looking for it. So these two stages are really important, thinking about what interests you, what motivates you, what's connected maybe to your degree or the other things that you're interested in, and then what opportunities are out there that match up to that. And we're going to be looking at, how you might find some of those things later on in this session. And then after that, it then takes you to that point where you're thinking about these next steps. So, okay, what do I need to know about this option to apply for it? Do I need to know about the entry requirements? Do I need to know about the job description, what they're looking for? And then thinking about, okay, how do I build that into my applications and how I actually reach out and apply for that job opportunity? So this kind of career decision sort of cycle is a really, really important thing just to consider before you're starting that process of looking for graduate jobs, because it can be very easy to fall into that trap of that scattergun of just applying for loads and loads of different things without sort of taking that step back first and thinking, why am I applying for this? Why does this sort of matter to me? And then actually, what do I need to do to make sure that this application is going to be successful, rather than just sending out lots and lots of different applications? So this is kind of the first sort of stage in that process. And we're going to be kind of referring back to some of this stuff during the session today. So before we kind of do that, and before we look at some of the different strategies for job search we're going to be talking about today, first thing I want to do is just get a little bit of an impression from you about how do you kind of job search already, and where do you go basically to look for opportunities. So in a second, I'm going to ask you to revisit that poll that we did earlier. There's going to be a new question on there, and I'm going to come to this question in a second. And this question's all about basically, what do you kind of do, or when you look for jobs, where do you look? Where do you find this information? So if you can go back to the link that I put in the chat previously, which is the one at the bottom of this screen, polev.com/ChristopherW685, it's going to ask you a question, which is, when you look for jobs, what sources of information do you use? And what I'm kind of looking for here is, what websites do you use? How do you actually find jobs when you're looking for jobs? You know, what platforms do you use? What websites? What sources of information? So if you can kind of share that with us anonymously through the poll, we've already got some examples coming through now, and we're going to use that to lead into the rest of the session today. The poll. So we're back on the recording now, getting a good perspective of where people get their kind of information from in terms of, you know, looking for graduate jobs. Really nice broad mix here. So we've got kind of the number one option, the biggest option on the screen, probably not that surprising, Indeed. We're going to talk a little bit about Indeed later, and you know, why there are benefits to using it, but also why it can be a little bit needle in a haystack. And then we've got some kind of slightly more specific advertised job sites. So things, for example, like LinkedIn. We've got, I think we've got GradCracker in there somewhere as well. Handshake, people have mentioned. Prospects, so ones that are kind of a little bit more specific. Then we've got kind of people using more general searches. So things like, for example, looking at maybe kind of startups, which is really interesting. So maybe kind of startup websites. There are some job sites specifically for people wanting to work with startup companies. More kind of industry specific job sites as well, so things like Space Careers, so it's good to see that kind of factored in as well, and kind of maybe with specific organizations or companies like the council. People have talked about Sheffield Hallam, that might be Hallam's website, and using obviously networks as well, so people talking about using the careers service, maybe using networks like Reed, maybe kind of searching directly for companies as well. So really nice mix. Great to see that kind of people are getting their sources of information from a range of different areas, really. And this links in really nicely to kind of the main focus of what I want to talk about in the session today, which is this idea of the job hunting pyramid. So it's fair to say, I think, that for the vast majority of people, when they look for job opportunities, it tends to be the very top of this pyramid. So looking at advertised job roles through some of those websites we've talked about already, you know, the Prospects of the world, Handshake, GradCracker, Target Jobs, lots and lots of advertised job roles. But this is only really scratching the surface. So I'm also going to talk today about a couple of different sort of strategies that it's really worth kind of bearing in mind when you're sort of looking for graduate roles. One of these is around speculative searches and applications. So that's where we're talking about you going out and finding companies and organizations and approaching them directly. And then the second side of that is also networking and what we call the hidden jobs market. So actually finding opportunities through connections, through people that you're already kind of connected with or have started to get connected with through social media platforms, things like LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and other platforms that you might be on as well. So I'm going to be talking about these three different strategies that kind of come into play when we're talking about graduate job search. And it's also really important to think about, you know, when you're kind of starting to look at sort of graduate jobs or looking at, you know, where you might find opportunities, to kind of look at the different areas where you might gather intelligence and might find out more about, you know, either what jobs are out there or specific information about particular industries or particular sectors. So this is just kind of breaking down some of the different areas that you might want to look in. There are some great websites out there for kind of what we call big data and insights. So for example, you know, how many job opportunities in engineering are there within the northeast of England? So there are some great websites like Institute of Employment Studies or Prospects Luminate, Institute of Student Employers, which have got really good information about, you know, where are jobs located in the country, you know, how many in particular sectors, what sectors are growing at the moment. And that kind of gives you a really good idea of what's happening around the country, but on a very kind of top-down level. It's then also really useful to look at localized tips and advice. So for example, I've got some sort of just general examples from the Sheffield area about particular kind of networks or sources of information that would give you local analysis. So Unlimited Business, for example, which is like a Sheffield-based business publication. Sheffield Star has always got some really good information about what companies are kind of growing and what sort of jobs are developing in and around Sheffield. And then you also have kind of more specific industry bodies. So things like Sheffield Digital or kind of the, you know, South Yorkshire Young Members Panel for the Institute of Mechanical Engineers that could give you more specific information about areas like engineering or technology, but more locally kind of focused. So that kind of idea of not just looking at the big picture, but looking at kind of local tips and advice is really useful. And then, of course, it's also really important to get those kind of personal accounts and stories and advice as well. So using things like LinkedIn and Twitter, social media, networks like the Hallam Collective, which we'll come on to, which is kind of our, I guess, kind of Sheffield-based LinkedIn, just for Sheffield Hallam students and graduates, and actually kind of connecting with people who've done the type of jobs that you want to do to get that insider information. What's it actually like to work in that job role? What advice can they sort of provide to you? And then on the other side of that is also this idea of, what do I need for that job? So using some of those websites like Prospects, Target Jobs, Adzuna, for example, to actually find out, what skills do I need for these jobs, and how can I kind of get these skills? So starting to build up a little bit of a checklist for yourself about, okay, if I'm interested in these particular jobs, how do I get the skills that I need for them, or what are the skills that I'll need for these jobs? So this is just kind of a sort of an overview really of why it's important to sort of gather information from different sources, really. And also important kind of bear in mind that, often when we're talking about graduate jobs, people will assume that we're talking about kind of large scale graduate companies, the Coca-Colas or Rolls-Royces of the world. But actually, a significant proportion each year of graduates move into work with small and medium-sized businesses, otherwise known as SMEs. So any kind of businesses that are fewer than 250 members of staff. So it's really important just to be aware that actually, there are a vast range of opportunities, not just with large companies, but also smaller companies as well. For example, in Sheffield, 96% of businesses are what we'd call micro businesses, so 0 to 9 employees. And that's where a lot of the work can be, even as a graduate within the Sheffield region. So important to kind of be aware of some of these sort of differences, I guess, between the size of company and indeed the size of company you might want to work for. With that in mind, there's actually a session coming up this Wednesday, which I'd really recommend people attend. So this is one that's kind of all to do with the RISE scheme. RISE is basically a Sheffield-based graduate jobs programme, permanent graduate jobs based in the Sheffield City region. They're recruiting in both March and June and July this year for final year students for roles across a wide range of different industries with small businesses in the Sheffield area. So these cover areas including marketing, design, engineering, computing, law, events. There's always quite a wide range of jobs there. The next round of these jobs is actually launching next Monday, and that's why we've got an event coming up on Wednesday at 11 o'clock online, which is all about RISE, explaining about the permanent graduate jobs that are going to be coming in the Sheffield region, and how you can actually apply for them. So that's part of our Class of 2022 week sort of offer this week. Do have a look out for that if you're not attending already. So in terms of kind of looking at, where we'd find opportunities, again, really useful to sort of break that down into those 3 areas that we talked about, that job hunting pyramid. So thinking about, okay, where am I going to find the information I need about the jobs that are out there? And as we said, there's 3 ways to do this. You've got your advertised roles through websites like Handshake and GradCracker and Indeed. But then you've also got actually this idea of applying speculatively. So reaching out directly to a company to see if they're potentially interested in working with graduates. Now, this is kind of particularly useful when you're talking about small and medium-sized businesses, because often they may not have that recruitment or marketing budget that a big company does. So they may not necessarily appear on all of the same job sites, or they may not have the budget to kind of advertise through those job sites in the same way that big companies do. So using kind of sites like LinkedIn, using kind of local websites like Unlimited Business, more specific industry websites like CIPD or Sheffield Digital, that can help you to find companies and find organisations that you might want to contact. And again, we'll talk in a second about what a speculative application could look like. It's also useful to bear in mind things like Google. So a lot of people think, oh, I won't use Google because it's, it's needle in a haystack stuff. But particularly if you're looking for small companies in the Sheffield area or your local area, if you're not from Sheffield, if you search beyond page 1 of those searches, that's where you'll tend to find a lot of the smaller companies that can't necessarily optimize their web searches to page 1. And so it gives you a way of kind of finding different organizations that maybe you won't always find on Indeed or on the first page of kind of the Google ranking. So do bear in mind that, Google is a platform that has got its uses, even if sometimes, it takes a bit of creative searching to find what you're looking for. And then finally, we talked about networking. We're going to come on to that and look at, how you can use social media to sort of support you with your job search. In terms of kind of advertised roles, we've talked about some of these websites already, but one that's really worth being aware of is Handshake. If you're not on Handshake already, which hopefully you are because you've turned up to this session today, Handshake is the university's kind of jobs and events platform. It's got a multitude of different functions. So this is why it's really important to be aware of, how you can get the most out of Handshake, really, because it's not just something you can use as a student, you can also use it as a graduate as well. So Handshake's got a couple of different functions. Number one is that lots of graduate jobs and kind of graduate schemes are advertised through the Handshake platform. So you can see here, this is one for a graduate civil engineer in Exeter, looking for people who have a degree in civil engineering. So this is just kind of one example of kind of a graduate job that might appear on the Handshake platform. But as well as just being a jobs platform, Handshake also advertises a lot of events. Some good ones to keep an eye out for are some of the employer events we've got coming up this year. So things like the Hallam Virtual Careers Fair and Physical Careers Fair. Those are taking place on the 17th and the 22nd of March. That's basically an opportunity for you to speak directly with employers about opportunities that they may have for final year students like yourself. So again, if you've not kind of attended one of the careers fairs before, we've got one that is on campus this year, and we've got one that is virtual on the 22nd of March. So, do have a look at those events. They're also a really good way to actually connect directly with employers, as well as finding advertised roles. And the other benefit of Handshake is it's a little bit like LinkedIn in that it's actually a network in itself. So it's a network connecting employers, universities, and students and graduates. And you can actually contact directly employers or recruiters through the platform in the same way that you might do on a social media platform like LinkedIn. So this is just an example from my kind of dummy student account, where actually I was contacted by a couple of people in the Metropolitan Police and various other companies to ask about, you meet the profile that we're looking for. Have you considered applying for this job? So you can actually use it as a networking sort of website as well as just a job search and kind of an event search site as well. Before I move on, we had a bit of difficulty at the start of the session with people arriving and then some kind of technical difficulties, people not being able to hear. So we're running a little bit behind on the session. So I appreciate this session was due to go up to 1 o'clock. We're going to keep going a little bit longer, but obviously everything on the session is going to be recorded. So if you do have to leave at 1 o'clock, it's not a problem at all. If not, we're going to keep going for the next sort of 10, 15 minutes. And obviously we will make sure to let you know how you can access the recording if you do need to leave early. But just wanted to give a heads up on that as we are just about to go over 1 o'clock. So that's kind of advertised roles, and I think advertised job roles fairly self-explanatory. Lots and lots of good websites which I've included on this sort of PowerPoint, which we'll send over following the session. But I'm more interested in talking about these other strategies, so particularly around speculative applications and then networking and using social media. So speculative applications, what we're talking about here is not just the idea of randomly shooting emails out to any old company asking if they're looking to work with graduates, but very much around a targeted message or communication to an employer to ask about ways that you could work together now or in the future. So this doesn't have to be about saying, have you got a graduate job? It can be very much about building a relationship with a company. That might be a local company that works in the industry that you're interested in. And it's really about kind of just, trying to get an idea of, does that organization recruit graduates? If so, how might they do that? And actually kind of offering a bit of a value proposition, perhaps there's something that we could do to work together. So I've included on the slides, which I will share after the session, just an example of a speculative application. So this is actually kind of taken from a sort of a dummy example for a second year student, but the principle is exactly the same. So the idea behind these speculative kind of applications is what you're trying to do is kind of provide a very sort of clear value proposition to an employer. They might not be recruiting for graduates at the moment, but they may have the need for the skills, the knowledge, experience that you can potentially offer. So in terms of how these break down, it's fairly straightforward. You start off just by kind of providing a little bit of an overview about what you might be emailing about, what you kind of want from them. And the best advice here generally tends to be keep it short, keep it succinct. You don't need to provide loads and loads and loads of detail. It's very much about, if you're sending something to someone, they're not expecting an email from you. You need to kind of keep it short and to the point. You then need to explain why it is that you want to get in contact with them. So, why are you interested in working with that organization? And this is where that kind of tailored approach really comes in. So really thinking about, what is it about that company that makes you want to work with them? Is it about projects that they've led on, that you've seen on social media or on their company website? Is it about something you read in a news publication about them? What is it that makes you want to work with them? And why is that connected to you? So why does that connect maybe to your career interests or to your degree or things like that? The third section then is around, what value you think you can bring. And I think a lot of people sometimes suffer from, I guess, imposterism or what's sometimes called imposter syndrome, where we kind of think, okay, I've just finished my degree, what maybe is a graduate company looking for in me, or, what can I bring to them? But the truth is, you've got an awful lot that you can offer to an organization, regardless of whether you've got industry experience or not. You're bringing 3 years of dedicated study from a subject. You're bringing kind of the knowledge, skills, and experience that you've accrued through all of your career today, your part-time work, volunteering, extracurricular, the degree itself, all of that kind of knowledge that you're bringing from those experiences. But also you might be bringing a fresh perspective to that organization that they haven't had before. So it's really about kind of taking that step back, like we said at the beginning, thinking about yourself, what interests you, what motivates you, what skills can you potentially offer? And then when you do reach out and contact companies, thinking about, okay, how can I bring that to that organization? For example, if you worked in something like digital marketing, it might be that you saw the company that you were wanting to apply for had recently updated their website, and there might be things that you could suggest, or kind of particular improvements or enhancements to maybe social media campaigns they've done that you might suggest that you could have, you could add value to, or that you could bring your skills or experience to. So the more specific and the more tailored that you can be in terms of talking about yourself, talking about the value that you can offer to an organization that shows that you've researched the company, that's always really, really valuable. And then you might end that speculative application simply by talking about what are the next steps. What do you want from that individual or that organization? Is it about setting up a phone call to talk about any opportunities? Is it about just getting a yes/no answer, finding out, is there a possibility to work with them? Would you want to kind of offer alternatives as well, like a chance to maybe just build a connection there? It may not even be about a graduate job. It might just be about talking to somebody about their industry and about their career background, and finding out a little bit more before you start to have that conversation about graduate opportunities. So would highly recommend considering this speculative approach and how you might do that. And I'll mention this again at the end, but this is something that our careers team can support with at Sheffield Hallam. The final kind of strand of that job hunting pyramid was making social media work for you. And I think this is, again, something where a lot of people are familiar with social media, particularly on a professional basis, but not everyone's always familiar with how to make it work best for them. So there's lots and lots of different things that you can do with professional social media, like LinkedIn or Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, any of these channels. The first thing is that a lot of these companies have careers accounts where they will actually kind of promote job roles and promote graduate opportunities as they come up. So it's really, really useful to follow these companies on social media if you don't do that already. Sounds like a really basic thing, but it's one of those things that a lot of people don't do. And therefore you might be missing out on opportunities that kind of pop up because they've been promoted by the company. Good example of that, Sky Early Careers that you can see on the screen in front of you. They promote a lot of their opportunities directly through their Twitter account, Instagram accounts, for example. So it's a way to kind of keep up with their recruitment as it happens. The other benefit of that is it also allows you to kind of research companies. So a lot of companies are very, very active on social media. They have a lot of really, really good information about the projects they're working on, their values, type of people that they employ. And it's also a way for you to actually find people that work for their company that you could potentially connect with, which we're going to come on to in a second. The other benefits of social media, particularly things like LinkedIn, is you can use them to kind of get an idea about what skills are needed in a particular industry or job role. So down the bottom left here, you can see this is an example taken from somebody's skills profile on LinkedIn. And this is a really, really useful kind of part of LinkedIn. If you go onto LinkedIn and you find someone that works in the type of job you're interested in, you can have a look on their profile. You can find their skills section where it talks about their industry knowledge or the skills that they've developed. And it helps give you an idea about, okay, what should I be talking about in terms of my skills? And are there any gaps that I might want to fill, or kind of any additional skills that I'm bringing that maybe that person doesn't have? And it can kind of really help you when you're putting together things like a CV or application. And then the final thing is actually using LinkedIn and social media to put yourself out there. So to actually kind of proactively search for jobs by changing kind of the title on your LinkedIn profile to say that you're looking for opportunities, or to actually put out a post on LinkedIn itself to say, I'm coming to the end of my degree, I'm looking for graduate opportunities, could people share this with their network? And that can be an effective way sometimes to kind of share your value out in a slightly wider way with kind of people who you know through the university or people that you've connected with from industry, and get them to share that with their networks as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can use social media, to kind of help you when doing graduate job searching. But the important thing is to really think about making it work for you, not just being a passive thing, but something that can actually help you to kind of find opportunities. And a good example of this is the Sheffield Hallam University alumni page. So if you go onto LinkedIn and you type in Sheffield Hallam University, there is actually kind of a page which you might already be following already, which has got all of the kind of graduates connected to Sheffield Hallam through LinkedIn. When you're on there, you can type in a quick search. So for example, here I've done graphic design, and it will bring you up with all of the graduates who are connected to Sheffield Hallam University and related to graphic design in some way. And you could do this with absolutely any search you wanted to. And then at the top, you can see this would help you find people that you might want to connect with and message. So for example, we can see this person who's been anonymized, graphic design assistant at Sheffield Teaching Hospitals. So again, it might be that you've got an interest in working within the healthcare service, but within kind of a design capacity. You see that person's done that job and you think it'd be great to connect with them, find out about how did they get there, how did they sort of gain that experience, what were the things they needed to do when they were applying, and get a little bit of inside knowledge that will help you with the application process. So particularly LinkedIn, I would say, is a great tool in terms of kind of finding people that are maybe doing the type of jobs you want to do and getting that inside information and inside knowledge. And that links back, just going back to what I was talking about before, about websites like the Hallam Collective, which I talked about at the beginning. So the Hallam Collective is basically the Sheffield Hallam version of LinkedIn, where it's kind of like a closed internal network for Hallam students and graduates. There's over 2,000 people on there. And that's a place where you can actually contact Sheffield Hallam graduates directly about mentoring, careers advice, support opportunities. And I've included a link on the slides to show you how to get to that web platform if you've not come across the Hallam Collective before. So that kind of broadly takes me to these sort of final three takeaways, really, about kind of finding graduate jobs. And as I said at the beginning of the session, this is very much a whistle-stop tour. I'm going to talk at the end about how you can kind of gain additional support from the careers team and attend sort of additional workshops if kind of looking for graduate jobs is something you feel you need extra support with. So first takeaway I would say is all about that kind of blend of those different approaches, the different strategies for job search. So looking at advertised jobs is really important. That's where a lot of opportunities will appear. So it's not just a case of kind of throwing out all of the advertised opportunities, but it's about kind of being selective with how you do this. So for example, it might be that you're randomly job searching one day on Target Jobs or any of the kind of advertised job search websites, and you find a role for a software developer and you think, it sounds quite interesting, but you want to find out a little bit more about it. So it might be that you then use websites like Prospects to find, the profile of a software developer or software engineer, find out the type of skills you need, and then sort of think, okay, that sounds like something I could do, but I want to find out a little bit more about the job before I start applying. And that's when you might use that third strand, so things like networking, to maybe find software developers at companies you're interested in through LinkedIn, contact them, find out a little bit more about the job, and then decide how that's going to inform your job search. So that might mean that you look at particular companies. It might mean that you kind of think, okay, this is how I'm going to change my CV to match up to the skills that I know are needed for that job. So you can bring all of those different things together, the advertised roles, kind of searching for companies online, and that networking aspect to really help you just feel a bit more prepared when you're applying for jobs. Another example of this might be, you're not really sure what you want to do, but you want to stay local to Sheffield. So you might look at, say, a publication like Unlimited online. You might see that an organisation like Twinkle, is really growing at the moment. So Twinkle do educational resources for primary and secondary schools. You might think, okay, they sound like a great company. They're growing. I want to find out a bit more about them. So that might mean then going onto their LinkedIn profile or looking at somewhere like Sheffield Digital and finding out a little bit more about them, and then connecting with someone through their platform to find out about what jobs are available at the moment and how you might be able to apply. So main takeaway here is really that blending these strategies together is the most important thing. You'll probably find that just using one strategy may not give you as much success as kind of bringing all three together. That idea of advertised jobs, speculative approaches, so going to companies directly, and networking as well. Second takeaway is just this idea of kind of proactive over reactive. So what I would say is when it comes to kind of job searching in general, it's always really useful to be proactive. So even if you're kind of going out and asking 20 people, an opportunity to connect, to maybe talk about a particular job that you're interested in, even if you get 19 rejections or 19 people don't get back to you, but the 20th person does, that still puts you in a much more positive position than simply waiting for advertised job roles to appear. if you're waiting for advertised job roles, you'll always find some stuff that comes up, but you'll be missing out on a bunch of great opportunities that you could have found otherwise. So that proactive approach of kind of reaching out, networking, really, really important as well. And the final kind of takeaway here really is, think like a recruiter. Put yourself in the position when you're kind of looking for work, or when you're kind of looking, to apply for jobs. Put yourself in that same position as someone who might be going through job application after job application and dealing with loads and loads of different people applying. Now, this is taken from a really, really good LinkedIn article from Mike Gray at Grad Consult, which I've included on the slides. But it kind of shows that actually the two biggest things that basically lead to applications being rejected, and this is taken from employer research from the Institute of Student Employers. The top one was about applications not being tailored to the job role. And the second one was about poorly written applications. So that might just be the quality or time people have put in. So, seeing that kind of information come back from employers should give you a good idea of why it's so important to target your job search, not just throw loads and loads of applications out there, but really consider about the quality rather than the quantity of kind of, the type of jobs you apply for or search for. And I've also included some useful kind of tips here that come back from that article, which you might want to have a read through in your own time. A lot of it crosses over with what we've talked about today, the importance of research. So showing that you understand what a company does, and kind of research the challenges facing the industry. Again, this all comes back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of taking time to find out about the type of companies or the industry that you're applying for, and not just using that scattergun approach for job searching, but also thinking about the importance of personal branding. So how do you talk about yourself? So when you're sending out a job application or you're connecting with somebody online, what do you say about yourself? What do you talk about in terms of the skills, the strengths that you can bring to an organization? And if you're not sure about that yet, then it's maybe useful to take that step back first and consider that before you start that process of job searching. And like we've said, sort of towards the kind of beginning of the session again, be as specific as possible, not general. General job searching is a bit like throwing all those darts at the board. You might have some success, but you can't predict what that success will be. Being specific, so thinking about the type of jobs you want to apply for, and being tailored in terms of the applications you send, the ways that you connect with, people in that industry. All of that will kind of help you have more success within your job search. And then the final thing is, talk to people in industry. It's the number one tip from most people who work in kind of careers work. If you talk to people in industry, it gives you that inside information that can really help you, not just in terms of finding opportunities, but also in the application process as well. So finally, just a reminder that all of the kind of support that we offer as a careers service is available to you as a final year student, but also as a graduate as well. So we have a lifelong careers support offer for graduates at Sheffield Hallam, even after you've finished your degree. And we have one-to-one appointments available with all of our employability advisors. We have a named employability advisor for each department. So you might have met the named advisor for your department already. For example, I work with the art and design department at Sheffield Hallam, and we can support with all sorts of things. That might be kind of thinking about how you can sort of enhance your graduate job search to basically make it as kind of thorough but as painless as possible, and so it doesn't feel like you're just chucking darts at a board. But we can also help with kind of the practicalities of the job search and application process as well. So CVs, cover letters, job applications, putting together portfolios, LinkedIn profiles, or any other elements of the application process like interviews, assessment centres as well. And we've also got a range of digital tools that you can use that will basically kind of help you with certain elements of the application process for graduate jobs, things like psychometric tests, practice video interviews, and our CV 360 software for checking CVs. So all of that can be found on our website, and I've included the links on the slides today. I've also included the link to a really, really good article from Elaine Mead on Medium called How to Treat Your Job Search Like a Job. Covers some really, really good advice around kind of consistency, that idea of sort of keeping records of who you've applied for, actually kind of basically setting aside time for job searching rather than just kind of treating it like a chore, so that you don't feel like it's taken up your whole life, but it's something that's targeted and focused and that you feel that you've kind of got control of. So some really, really good tips in that article as well. And final thing, really, just a reminder that we've got a whole bunch of great sessions taking place this week as part of Class of 2022 week. We've got one more session coming up today. That's What Next? Exploring Career Options at 2 p.m. So looking at all the different options that are available to you as a final year student as you become a graduate, gap years, working for yourself, graduate schemes and graduate jobs and postgraduate study, and a range of other really, really good sessions taking place this week, including on Wednesday morning at 11, the RISE South Yorkshire Graduate Jobs event. So this is going to be talking all about those permanent graduate jobs in the Sheffield area through the RISE programme that I was talking about earlier in today's session. Final reminder just before we leave, again, all of the support that's available from the careers team at Sheffield Hallam and the enterprise team who deal with self-employment, business startup, all of that is available to you as a graduate on a lifelong basis. So even if you don't choose to access our support now as a final year student before you leave, you can still come back and access all of that support via our websites once you're a graduate as well. So that kind of takes me really sort of to the end of what I've got to present today. I'm going to end the recording there, and then what I'm going to do is just open up the chat for any questions people have got that we haven't covered so far.